to clients versus what your fees are. Meaning, if on average the results that you're able to bring about to your clients, and if we used cost savings, you say on average somebody works with you over 90 days, you're able to help them to come up with, I don't know, $25,000 or $50,000 in savings. Well, working with you over 90 days, your fee shouldn't be like $2,000 or $3,000. I mean, that's a huge difference between the value that you're delivering and what you're charging the person. Again, also, if you have limiting beliefs around money, like, well, I could never really make that much, or I can't raise my fees that much, or I could never get paid that much, then you just automatically stick with a number that you know is easier, or you believe it's easier for someone to say yes to, so that you can, so that you don't have to deal with rejection. And in reality, what happens is that you lock yourself in and you end up being trapped to not be able to make the fees that you're really worth. So now we talked a little bit about why they undercharge. Let's see if you can recognize yourself in any of these behaviors. How consultants undercharge? Well, they undercharge. The most obvious one is by lowering fees or lowballing on proposals. Again, I'm trying to avoid rejection, or I'm trying to stay in the safe zone, so I'm just doing that so that I can make sure that I get a yes, not really thinking long-term or strategically as to whether does this fit in with what my income goal is, whether it's for the month or for the year or for the quarter, and again, does it really line up with the value that I'm creating for my clients? So that's one way in which you would undercharge. The other one is where you just simply use another consultant's fee as your benchmark or lever for your fees. Now, one of the things that I promised in this webinar was that I was going to explain why you would end up losing out when you do that, that while it's okay to do industry research, you absolutely don't want to benchmark based on what someone else is doing, even if they're serving the same audience, because you're a different person. Your signature system, which is basically your special sauce or your way of doing things, and the type of value that you bring to your clients is always going to be different. So if you just say, oh, A has a similar background, so I'm going to charge whatever he's charging, a lot of times more times than not, you're missing out, and missing out on a lot of money, because your fees are always going to be, you always have to take into consideration the value that the client you bring to the client. And I keep using the word value and talking about value-based pricing because it's very important to understand that when it comes to whether someone says yes or no to the fees, it's not really up to you, it's up to the client. And a lot of times as consultants, we want to start making decisions for the clients. And it's not for us to make that decision. The client decides how much the value is then worth, and then you work from there. That leads right into how you undercharge when you offer discounts. Recently, I had someone offer me a discount without being clear on what it is that I wanted or whether I was even interested in the service. So right away, when you start off lowballing or giving discounts, trust me, it's for the wrong reasons, and you're also stepping into the client's shoes to make decisions. The reason that I say that you're making a decision for the client, because if it's going through your head, well, I know they can't afford that, or I know he can't afford that, well, allow the person to say that and make that decision. Because honestly, if we look at our own personal lives, and I know that some people have, we all have different spending habits, but I think that we can all point to something in our life at a certain time period, whether it was something that we purchased, whether it was clothes, whether it was shoes, whether it was a trip, whatever the case it was, an electronic device, that we purchased something that technically we couldn't afford, but we valued it enough that we made the sacrifice to make it happen. So allow the client to make a decision as to what is valuable to them. I've had cases where prospective clients have gone through a discovery session with me, learned of my pricing, went off, saved the money, and came back. Why? Because it was important to them. It would have been I would have been short selling myself if then I jumped into the process and decided, well, if they can't afford it now, then it means that I have to lower my fees. Big mistake. Another mistake where consultants undercharge is when you are using time as the main factor in your pricing. If time is the main factor in your pricing, then what happens when you run out of time? Especially for those of you who are just starting out as independent professionals, what happens when you run out of time? Because after a while, there's only so much of your time that is humanly possible. So if the difference between what you charge Abby and what you charge Michelle is based on time, then the only way that you could keep making money and keep growing in your income would be to keep adding time, and at some point you're going to max out. So using time as the main factor creates a big issue for you. So that's why I bring it back again to making it value-based, and we'll talk more about that. So far I have shown you and I've given you information about undercharging, and I'm confident that many of you can probably nod your head and recognize where you are undercharging. So let's talk about some of the strategies then that you can use to fix that so that doesn't keep happening. One of the first things, and I'll keep bringing that up, is to stop charging by the hour. Now, I gave you one example as to why charging by the hour creates an issue for you, because eventually you run out of time unless you're going to start hiring other people and cloning yourself, and that's a different webinar. The other problem with charging by the hour is as you get better at what you do, as your expertise grows, guess what? You're going to be able to do it in a shorter amount of time. So if you're doing it in a shorter amount of time, but you're telling the person, well, I'll just bill you by the hour, eventually what used to take you 3 hours may now take you an hour and a half. So then that's an hour and a half of your fees then that are now gone because it's taking you less time. So that's another reason to consider getting away from charging by the hour. Quoting fees without considering all costs, and I'll share a personal story around that. I remember a few years ago, someone asked me to come and do a presentation, and it would have been like a 45-minute presentation to, I think it was a group of healthcare executives, talking to them. I think it was about branding at the time. So I said, sure, and I think my fee was, if I remember correctly, I think I said like $300 or $500 or something like that. So at first glance, it sounds like, well, $500 for 45 minutes sounds great. But as I started to sit and really unpack it and think about all of the costs that are involved in bringing that presentation to fruition, by the time I was finished really adding up the cost, it was more like $2,500 it should have been my fee. So a lot of times as consultants, we focus on what it takes maybe in terms of materials and what it takes, again, in terms of time, but there's a whole lot more that go into it. What are all of the costs that go into completing it for that client? And in many cases, you end up letting little things slide or not charging them for certain things, and over time that builds up. So before you start quoting fees, be clear on not only what the client needs and what would be an ideal solution, but really put into thought what are all the costs that are involved. When I'm working with my VIP day clients, I mean, we think about everything that it takes not only to land the client, but also to service the client, and then compare that against what the fee that you were thinking of, and then you do a reality check and then have a different fee. Another pricing mistake is only having one payment option, and by that I mean, are you coming up with other ways to make it easier for people to do business with you? Now notice I said easier, not cheaper. So when you run into scenarios and maybe someone wants a discount, maybe instead of a discount, maybe what you can offer is a payment plan. Or if you're going to be working with them over a period of time, maybe there's a monthly retainer approach that you can use, again, rather than lowering the fee. So there's other ways. So if you only have one way, you pay me, once a month, this big lump sum, you charge, I'm going to charge you hourly, then it starts to limit then, how your money flow is coming in. If you're able to work with several clients and you have different payment options and payment plans, then it gives you flexibility. It allows the person who can pay all up front to pay up front. The people who want to use payment plans can have payment plans so that you have less instability in the money coming in. So again, in some cases you can do it, some cases you can't. For those of you who have more control over how you're going to get paid, consider having more than one payment option. The last pricing mistake that I want to bring to your attention today is the idea of keeping fees at a flat rate for long-term clients. And this is the way I see it. Why, if someone is getting more of your time, more of your energy, more of your expertise, more solutions through your work, that they're being paid less for it? It's sort of like you were working for a company, and as you increased in your position, as you advanced career, as you kept longevity with the company, that your salary somehow went down. Again, I know that's a challenging way to think about it, but if someone is getting more of your expertise, why are they paying less than if someone is coming in right off the door? So there's a lot to be changed there. Again, if you're consistently showing the value that you're able to bring to customers, I mean, even in bad economies, you have companies that would at least give a cost of living adjustment increase. It may not be much, so why would you think that you wouldn't need to raise your fees because a client has been with you long term? Huge pricing mistake. All right? Now, I've given a lot of information so far, so I want everybody to pause. Take a deep breath. I'm sure that there's things that you have seen that you can start making changes on, or mistakes that you have made that you may not have considered before. It's okay. It's always good to hit the reset button and to start fresh. So I don't want you to leave here beating yourself up. Just, take a deep breath, take the information in, and just see how it can apply to you. All right? So let's continue. The other thing I want to share with you now is that now we've recognized the ways to not price your services, right? And again, I'm beating you over the head with trading time for dollars. So I think I said enough about that. I can leave that alone. So pricing strategies to getting paid what you're worth. Consider this for a second. If you had a full-time job, or if you were going for a full-time job, you would not just go having no idea and no concept of what is a good annual income for you. You would never do that. What you would do is make sure that you're clear on what your desired compensation is. So why not do the same thing when you're a consultant? Why not decide, based, again, on your own analysis, what your costs are, what you need to live, your own earning potential, your expertise, all of that, and have a desired annual income. Because if you don't have a income goal that you're working towards, then you are basically victim to everyone else's budget and their priorities, and then you're just stuck to taking whatever you can get. And that does not equate to knowing what you're worth. Now, having an annual income and being able to break that down by month, by week, by quarter, however you want to do it, at least gives you a place to start. So for some of you, if you're still in corporate and you're thinking about becoming a consultant, or you're a new consultant, a good base level to start might be what your most recent salary was. And again, I'm not advocating an hourly rate, but at least calculate the hourly rate based on your most recent or your current annual salary. So it gives you an idea of where to start. Not suggesting that you do it hourly, but at least you have a number in your head that you're working with. in terms of your annual income. So then when you start looking at it over, say, like a monthly basis, and you're looking at the type of projects that you're taking on or